Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 2 o'clock session of the 2020 Kentucky Virtual K12 Technical Summit. I almost forgot what it was called there. I have done this too many times today. We are so excited for this conversation today. We know this is a hot topic around the state, especially coming off of a closing of the school year with NTI. And so we're excited about this discussion, as well as, what are the implications for going forward in the next school year, whatever it may look like. We all keep saying. But we're really excited to have Greta Casto and Rhonda Thompson here leading this discussion today, and we hope that you all will join in via the live chat. We also have Mike Smith, who's moderating the live chat today, as well as the Twitter chat. We have that. If you have any comments or questions you want to put in, hashtag KYText, make sure you look at that, and there will be a post survey link posted at the end of this session, so that way you can do the feedback and the ELA certificate for this 1 hour of the event. So I will let you guys take it away. Thank you so much for being with us here today. It is all you.
I will go ahead first. My name is Rhonda Thompson. I'm the District Technology Coordinator for Jackson County Public Schools. I'm also, I guess, technically the NTI coordinator here for the district as well. It's kind of my responsibility to get all that information out to the teachers and staff, as well as gathering all the documentation that's needed for KDE.
And my name is Greta Casto, and I am the CIO at Russell Independent Schools. And I work very, very closely in both proximity to her desk and because she's my very good friend with the NTI coordinator. So we have done quite a bit of work to try to get our stuff streamlined, and we're going to talk about some of that today.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to, you should see the bit.ly here in just a second for the presentation. Greta, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, so here is the bit.ly, bit.ly/ERATC, ERATC, NTI. So I'll leave that up there for just a little bit. We'll also be posting the presentation, the slide deck, on the ERATC website, so it'll be available after the conference is over. So we'll give everybody just a second to get that down. Mike, if you want to copy that into the chat, that would be great, so we can go on. Thank you, Neil. So again, here we are. Here's our contact information, our email addresses, and our Twitter handles. And I'm just going to start off with just a kind of a general reminder of actually what KDE defines as the non-traditional instructional program. It is a program that encourages the continuation of academic instruction on days when school would otherwise be canceled. School districts create plans to deliver instruction to every student in the district and provide for student and teacher interaction on those days, with the ultimate goal of continuing instruction. And I think the key word there is continuing.
Yeah, screaming it for the people in the back. Continuing education, continuing.
Yes, and so Greta and I have had several conversations over the last week trying to get ready for this. And we were all, dealt this hand really quickly and had to come up with a plan very quickly, and we did the best we could. But in the event that we have to go back to this, we're hoping to do better and to provide more real instruction than maybe just the typical worksheets that a lot of people send home. But again, that key word is continuing what's going on in the classroom every day on an NTI day. So that just a general reminder there. And the next slide, Greta has created this wonderful Venn diagram to compare traditional and non-traditional.
And while we go along with this, everybody, we wanted this is kind of billed as a round table. So please continue on that bit.ly. As we go through this stuff, if you have ideas of things that you're doing at your school, or if your children happen to go to school in another district, in a neighboring district, and there was something that was really impressive to you that other school did, please share those things in the speaker notes at the bottom, and we will talk about those things or share them in the chat. because the goal of this is for us to all share ideas of things that we have done that worked super well, or we could do the converse of things that really kind of stunk, and don't waste your time doing this because it didn't work. So that's what we hope to get out of this. We'd like for everybody to share not just what Jackson County was doing and what Russell Independent was doing, but we'd like to share statewide. So basically, the things I wanted to kind of get across with this Venn diagram is that it's instruction. Quality instruction is quality instruction is quality instruction. And so obviously you're not face-to-face in NTI, but you still every day have to introduce a concept. You still have to have a lesson about the concept. You can't just give an assignment and expect the kids to be able to do things. And so teachers have become this was thrown in their lap, and they were almost paralyzed with, what do I do? The first little bit they were thinking, well, we'll just do review, and maybe we'll be back in school. And then we weren't. And so you can't review forever. We're going to go back to this over and over and over in this presentation. It has to be continuing education. And my word, if we start school not face-to-face, we're definitely going to have to move the dial to the new stuff and talk about the new things. And so you're going to have a lesson that presents a skill or a concept. And in face-to-face classroom, at that point, the kids are given an opportunity to practice that skill. They're given an opportunity to mess with it a bit and make sure that they can understand it. We don't necessarily have to score or evaluate practice, but we do need to give them time to practice, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. At some point, though, there needs to be an evaluation made. Does this kid, this child right here, does Morgan Casto, does Will Casto, do they understand this concept? There has to be an evaluation, and there has to be appropriate feedback given. If you give a packet to kids and it doesn't get graded, or you give a packet to kids and it gets graded several weeks later, and no one cares. That's not effective. And so the beauty of NTI in the state of Kentucky and us having this network and all of these things that we're talking about, the beauty is that we can do all those things daily. We can do it all. We just have to cheerlead those teachers who are freaking out. And that's why we wanted to talk about some of these things with people who aren't necessarily instructional people, but things that you can do to help your teachers be able to do all of these things daily during non-traditional instruction. And we don't have any idea, by the way, what's going to happen. So do you have any anything to add to that, Rhonda?
No, I wish someone had a crystal ball, though, that could tell me, I'm sure like everybody else would, because we're still up in the air on what to do and how much planning to do. And
that would have been a good graphic on this, a crystal ball.
Yeah, a crystal ball, yes.
So guys, this is not our first rodeo. Our first rodeo happened in the spring, and it was okay that everybody was scrambling, and it was okay that everybody was freaking out, because we just had to hold it together until the end of the school year. But in the fall, if we start that way, it is not our first rodeo. So we have got to, during this summer, reflect and make those things better and use some of this time to get a game plan. So going back to that Venn diagram, the bottom line is that we need to have these things. Teachers have to have these things in place for NTI to be effective, just like they have to have them in place for face-to-face to be effective. Here's classrooms that are not effective face-to-face. If you don't have these things, the lesson is not effective. So we're going to talk about this. This is basically how we have broken down our presentation. You got to have an objective, a concept, or a skill to be taught. That's the basis of any good lesson. You have to have instruction from the teacher, or the teacher has to find something that instructs the child and the parent in some cases, because a lot of times the parent's not going to understand the concept. So you have to have that instruction in there. We have to give them time to practice or demonstrate mastery or attempt at mastery, whichever it is. And they need to evaluate and give timely feedback. So we're going to break each one of these down specifically. And in order to do that, we have to decide what quality is.
So that was our next slide, is all these things we're going to talk about how we can use a technology tool that can be either whether they're face-to-face or whether it's in virtual, that can be used to do these type of activities. So, and again, like Greta said, what does that quality instruction look like, whether it's face-to-face or virtual? And I love what Greta said, we have ineffective teachers face-to-face too. So all these things can be for both. So things we're going to kind of look like today. One thing that's very important, and I think in my district when we were hit on March 13th trying to come up with a plan, became very evident. Are your tools streamlined? Is everybody using the same LMS system? Is everyone using the same video conferencing system? Is everybody using the same, like Remind 101 app? I think parents get very confused when one teacher uses one LMS and then another teacher does another one, and they have multiple logins. Some use Zoom and some use Google Meet. So one thing we've reflected on is that everybody's going to have to use the same tool to make it very streamlined for the district, for the teacher training, and for the parents. Do parents have what they need in order to help the children? Myself, I have 2 teenagers at home, and was trying to help them with Algebra 3 and geometry, which is not my strong suit. So what resources can we provide the parents so that they can help those students at home? Do the teachers have the things they need? Do they have the devices they need? Do they have maybe the cameras they need? Do they have the materials they need? And the big thing is, do they have the training that they need to teach online? With NTI, we want to make sure that there's instruction and some sort of evaluation going on every day, like Greta said, and that kids are getting feedback so that they understand if the concept was mastered. And that's going to look completely different in a virtual world versus a face-to-face. And are there procedures in place that work regardless of traditional versus non-traditional? So, Greta?
All right. So basically, we've got to decide what is quality, and what is effective. So you can use this phrase, or teachers using whatever effectively. And mainly on this little part, I wanted to talk a little bit about video conferencing. So I wanted to give you just a little view into some of the things that I saw in my district during the initial part of this. We had done NTI before. We were not a brand new to NTI school district. We had done it from the first year that it was available. So we did have a little bit of experience with it. But we had not done, well, no one had done long-term NTI instruction. And so we really wanted to make sure that our teachers had communicated with the families and had touched base with them. I think originally the state was talking about touching base with them once a week, and then we decided that wasn't enough, especially for the younger age students. So enter Zoom, enter Google Meet, enter Teams. You just can keep going and keep going and keep going. And what I found was getting some feedback from the teachers were lots of them were using that platform for everything. That's how they were going to instruct. That's how they got to touch base with their parents. That's how they got to do their whole list of things. So we're trying to use that one tool to accomplish everything. And that's asking a lot of a tool. And so it dawned on me that I had not given them enough training in what those tools needed to be used for, nor had I given them enough training in how to select a tool based on the job you needed it to do. They were just grasping at something. And so a lot of that's on me, and I have to claim that, and I have to try to work to be better at that. But in doing so, that doesn't make those tools bad. It just makes me need to figure out how to get that across to them and let them do some evaluation of the tools before they choose. So on the next slide, we're talking about different types of video conferencing. And Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, blah, 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 blah. Those things are great if you want to have a collaborative environment and you want kids to talk back and forth. But the first few times you do it, especially with like first graders, they're just going to talk all over each other. You know, many of us had to talk about video conferencing with our board members. And when we had these virtual board meetings, and if your board, maybe your Board of Education isn't like mine, but my Board of Education found it very challenging. And they didn't know to wait and pause, and they didn't know, they would forget that they were on camera, and that could be dangerous. And, you know, just lots of things. And when you're doing that with little people, obviously they're going to just be excited to see their friends. And let's talk about the fact that you're counting that as communication and only 4 people came onto the video call. So that's not necessarily the best way to instruct if you've only got 4 students there, especially if you're not recording it. So teachers aren't trained to think about those things. So that's something we would think about. All of these in your Bitly, when you come to this, and you can keep this forever and ever, amen, but all of these have links to examples of things. And so we're not going to take time to necessarily go to that right now because we don't have the time to do that. But just know that there's all of those links. Let's go back a couple. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I was just showing them those are links that takes them to other.
Absolutely.
The video options for other students without internet. We had a conversation on Friday, and I don't know, Greg, I don't think you were in that meeting because it was region 6 and 8, I think, or 7.
I was not.
Okay, so Neil, I think, was in it, and a couple districts had shared that they had actually had the teachers record themselves, and they saved those recordings on flash drives, and each kid had two flash drives, one to take home and one the teacher for a week, and then one for the teacher to keep to record new stuff on, and they would switch out. So for your kids without internet option, if the teacher wants to be able to provide instruction and they're recording it themselves, maybe having those pen drives would be good for kids without internet access as far as the instructional part. So I thought that was a great idea. I had never really thought about kind of an old technology, but most of our Chromebooks will work with pen drives. So they would still be able to get that instructional piece that's missing by just having a worksheet to do.
That is a great idea.
Yeah, and that was an idea that we actually heard from Region 7, I think it was. There was a district that was talking about doing that. I'm not sure. I can't remember which district it was, but I think that I thought, you know, if there's it feels low tech because you're talking about jump drives and everybody's talking about Google Drive now, but really it's just reinventing, you know, how we use that tech to meet students' needs.
Listen, it's whatever works.
Right, exactly.
Well, that basically has to be our theme. That has to be our anthem. It's whatever works, because right now, all that we can know for certain is that we have to instruct kids, and kids have to learn what they're supposed to learn, and they need to be able to move on when hopefully this, you know, ends. So we don't want to, that's the one thing we can count on, is that we have to teach them however we can do so. Now, if you're using Google Meet to teach, or Zoom, or Microsoft Teams, or you're going to use Screencastify or these other things, that we at our district, we did a whole lot with teachers' cell phones. We do not have laptops that go home with every teacher. I wish we did, but we're an independent district, and if we're going to have the devices for the students to take home, we don't have the devices for the teachers to take home. So they used their phones. One thing we did do though was we purchased off of Amazon. It doesn't have to be Amazon. You can purchase anywhere, but we purchased everybody from the get-go a tripod with a remote. And so that made their phone their camera. It made their phone their document camera. It made their phone many things. And that was theirs to keep at their house. That's just an idea that was like a little parting gift. You're going home to your house to teach the masses, and we don't know when we're seeing you again. Here, take this tripod. But it was not expensive, and that's just an idea of something that you can do that's just, teachers love little perks, and it's not expensive, but it sure did help our instruction. So you can record with those cell phones, and you can make it your document camera, and you can put things straight into Google Drive on that phone. And so that's just an idea of things to do. There's a link here to choice boards, and we're going to talk some more about that a little bit later, but that is hot, hot, hot. And if you're not an instructional person and you don't know what that is, it's just where we did this a lot with our younger students, and especially with our preschool, because our preschool has to do this as well. And so she's showing you some sample choice boards right now. And it basically just gives them, you guessed it, a choice of what to do. It's very, very, very student-centered, but that it still focuses on that objective that we were talking about that you have to have. And it's a way for them to get that practice in that we talked about that you have to have. But it's not just for little people. High school, there's some really amazing high school choice boards as well.
So the one I just shared was the Roaring Twenties. So that is from
exactly.
the Great Gatsby, and so
Exactly.
that's on that one.
It is adaptable to any age, even college. And so those things, and the reason I say that, I don't mean to insult anybody's intelligence. You may all know about choice boards, but I know that the people in my office that are technology, I'm the instructional person, so I have to tell them these things, and they're like, oh, well, they could do this, this, and this. So if you didn't know about that, those are things that you can share with your teachers and maybe give them some ideas of things to put in choice boards, or help them create a digital choice board. They'll know what a choice board is, but they may not know how to create a digital one. Graphic organizers, my word, there's a thousand of those out there, but there are a couple here that there are some examples too. ThingLink is, again, another thing that would be great to utilize in NTI, and it would be appropriate for very, very little people all the way up through to college age kids, depending upon what the subject matter was. So let's see, I think we have a question here. What's the name of the, oops.
What's the name of the iPhone holder that you got, Greta?
I do not remember the actual brand, but I do know that it had a moldable, and I would suggest this too, it had a moldable, instead of a hard set tripod legs, they were moldable so that you could mold it around something and it would still hold your phone. I chose that because of being able to use it as a document camera. I wanted them to be able to attach it somewhere high enough up to be able to see a document. That way, if they wanted to use the document like a whiteboard and write on it, they could. And I also chose to get one that did have a remote. So it had the moldable legs and the remote. And the reason I did both of those things were for the ease of the teacher. If they were going to record a lesson of themselves, yes, like Neil is showing. What brand is that?
I don't know either. I got this at Walmart. It was just but yeah, it's got the legs where you can bend so like, yeah, like really the reason I have this is because these fit really well around the handrail of a cruise ship when I'm taking videos with my GoPro on a cruise ship, which I'm supposed to be on.
Can they see your video?
Yeah, I put it up where everybody can see it out there. So this is what Greta's talking about. And so you can see the head of this will move so it could hold a phone that direction. And these tripod legs, you could, of course, set them on a table But yeah, that's what you're talking about, right? Yeah, I got this at Walmart, just the electronics section.
And
Probably
then
like,
I got one that has a little remote because they could put the camera far enough back if they wanted to demonstrate something, they could start and stop the camera.
now that would be really cool to be able to do the remote.
So that I'll tell you what I can do. I can get the brand of it and either put it out on the DTC listserv, or I can have Neil put it on their webpage, the ERATC webpage.
We'll link it with the resources to all the materials today. We'll be linking over the next couple of weeks on the ERATC webpage for the 2020 summit. Connie had asked kind of what the cost of that was. I think this tripod that I got at Walmart was probably like $10 or something, I think.
I think the one that I purchased, if you purchased more, you got a break. If you purchased more, you got a break. I think it ended up being about $10.
Yeah.
I think it started out as 12 and then it became 10, but I could be wrong on that price because I was so glazed over when I ordered those to try to get them out to teachers.
And you got those on Amazon, is that correct?
I did.
Okay, yeah. So that was another question that was in the chat.
Some schools can order from Amazon, some schools cannot. But that's regardless of brand. I think if you could get something that had those moldable legs that gave the teacher some versatility, and something that, had a remote to start and stop video, it would be perfect.
I think that's a great idea. I never would have thought of that. That's a great idea. Like I said, I use mine on a cruise ship. I wasn't thinking about instruction.
They really appreciated it. The teachers really, I saw one of my teachers sent a picture to me and said, I'm being MacGyver, and he had his phone with packing tape taped to a lamp. And the lamp wasn't on, and he was teaching so he could have a document camera. And so I immediately went and ordered those. That's what made me think of it. I didn't think of it by myself either. Guided notes are a great thing to talk to teachers about and have them do with their kids. And students don't know how to take notes. They don't know how. Guided notes is one of those things that would be great face-to-face or virtual, but especially virtual. That would teach them to take notes. And then, of course, flashcards. Quizlet is one example. There are many, many examples, but those are just some examples of things you can do for instruction. Okay, Miss Rhonda.
Oh, I thought you were doing this one, but I can jump right in.
I couldn't get it to go to the next page.
We're good. You're next, so you do assessment, and I'll do feedback.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Yep.
So basically, assessment is something that was lacking. They would give an assignment. I'm speaking about my school. They would give an assignment, but they wouldn't necessarily have the assessment to get to the feedback piece. That really all needs to be just very streamlined. It doesn't need to be a separate thing. So formative assessment is going to go on as the kids are doing their work. So what the teacher needs to be doing, they don't need to see it as the old-fashioned, you're going to do your homework, you're going to bring it in, you're going to give me a paper, I'm going to grade it tonight, maybe tomorrow night during my child's soccer game, but I will get it back to you. And then on Friday, you get the paper back, and the kid looks at it to get their grade, and they don't look at anything else. That's not going to be effective assessment, because you want to know right now, did this child get this so that I can move on tomorrow, or do I need to stay here a bit longer and make sure that the child gets this? So here's some examples: Google Form quizzes, Kahoots, Edpuzzle. Please make sure your teacher, especially if they're going to instruct with YouTube, please make sure that they know how to use Edpuzzle. And that's been around a long time. You may or may not be familiar with it if you are a tech person and not an instructional person. But basically what that is, imagine, if you will, back in the VHS days when they roll the VCR into your room And the teacher would start whatever you were going to watch, and then they would stop it and ask a question, and you would discuss. And then they would start it again and go until the next point where there was some needed discussion. So they would stop it, and there would be discussion. That's what Edpuzzle does on a YouTube video. It allows the video to play, whether that video is a teacher instructing or it's a video that a teacher went out and found that talks about the topic. You can go to a certain point and a teacher can insert a question. The kids can't skip over the question. They must answer the question. So that's great if they're going to use video to teach. Poll Everywhere is great. Most everyone has seen that. We do that. We do polls like that on Go Soapbox, but Poll Everywhere is something that they certainly could use. Padlet, Flipgrid, and we have some Flipgrid examples later on. But one thing I want to stop and talk about Flipgrid for a second. This is something that my special teachers, my itinerant teachers, that like your music teacher and your PE teacher and your librarian, those teachers that see kids once a week in the elementary grades, or any type of performance class like band or orchestra or choir or art. Flipgrid is the perfect thing for those people, and I'm just going to kind of talk real quick about this because I'm sure I'm talking way more than I need to be, and I don't want to take up too much time. But with your special teachers, your music and your library and your art and PE, those teachers can work with the classroom teacher. They can have whatever their first grade assignment is, whatever their fifth grade assignment is for that week. They can have that ready to roll and can send that to their classroom teacher if it's on Flipgrid, and all the teacher has to do is include that link to the Flipgrid in their daily assignment for the special teacher. So if it's Wednesday and the kid's supposed to have PE that day, on Wednesday, that teacher assigns the PE Flipgrid for the teacher. The teacher has to send it ahead. The PE teacher sends it to the classroom teacher puts it in there. Then say it is jumping jacks, or we're going to do push-ups. Then the assignment can be, you're going to do your push-ups for this many times. Here's how I'm going to show you how to do a push-up. This is how you do a push-up. Make sure your legs are straight, blah, blah, blah. Now I want you on your Flipgrid to show me a good push-up, or do 3 push-ups and tell me which one was the best and why. Something that simple can get them moving and can give them the ability to do some assessment on whether the child got it or not. You can see here, grade Cam, Seesaw. Seesaw's great. I love it, but that's mainly for younger age students. If you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to talk to you. I've worked a long time with the special teachers that just meet with kids once a week on ways that they could do assessment with a full school with 550 kids. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know.
All righty, so now I think it's a good time for us to talk about feedback, because we've talked about instructing students and we've talked about assessing, so now we want to give them feedback. This week, I participated in a couple of sessions through the Murray State, the Summit. I guess that was last week, because today's Monday. And one of their speakers was Jennifer Gonzalez, who has the website called The Pedagogy, and she talked a lot about feedback and why feedback was important. So she outlined the fact that effective feedback makes a plan for improvement rather than rating the existing work. So you're not just saying good job, you're trying to tell them how to improve their work in the future. Feedback should describe the problem and its impact and then prompt the student for a solution. So an example was, a great job on your presentation, you spoke very quickly at times. Could be more effective if written, you spoke very quickly, and this can make it hard for an audience to follow what you're saying. What can you do to make sure you go slower next time? So you'll notice I've color-coded everything to describe the problem, its impact, and what can you do to make it better next time. So think about that and what kind of feedback you've seen teachers give to students in the past, especially in the virtual world. And so we've got some digital tools for timely feedback. So if you are teaching virtually and online, we're a Google district, so I just focused on the G Suite part. If you have another learning management system, I'm sure they can do the same things. But one thing to consider is that when you're doing classroom assignments in Google or your learning management system, that you provide timely comments on what the kids have turned in. You know, don't let it sit there for days and days and days before you reply back to them and let them know what they did right or what they did wrong or what they need to improve. The wonderful thing about Google Docs, whether it's Google Docs or Sheets or Slides or whatever, is that you have the ability as the teacher to add those comments to those documents to kids. So you can do some collaboration or some peer review if they're writing a paper. You can give them real-time feedback on what they've done correctly and what they need to improve on. Greta was talking about using the Flipgrid and like recording themselves doing a push-up. Well, the teacher can also record feedback with Flipgrid on that push-up and give them that timely feedback that they need, what they need to improve, what they did well. So the teacher needs to remember they can use that not only to give an assignment to the kids, but they can use it themselves to provide feedback. You can still use tools like Screencastify to provide feedback. Just record yourself. One example is you have a Google Doc on your screen and you're going through reading what the kids have typed up on a Google Doc, and you use Screencastify to record yourself going through the document and talking about changes that need to be made. And of course, you can provide timely feedback with those video conferencing tools, either as a whole group or individually. And these are just a few of the tools that you can use for feedback. There are so many more.
And Rhonda, if I can hop in here real quick on that. I don't know, there's not a lot of teachers at my school that realize this, but they loved this for feedback. And I just wanted to throw it out here in case you all hadn't heard about it before. But Google Keep will allow you to make a list, you know, a checkoff list in Google Keep. So you can have that as a little add-on onto your Chrome. And then when you're giving feedback, especially if it's about writing or something like that, that list will pop up at the side and you can just copy it over into your comments, so you don't have to say the same thing over and over about, depending on what you're teaching. But you know, if you're an English teacher, I don't know how many times you say run-on sentence, check yourself, different things like that you can put in Google Keep, and you can just drag them over if it's something that you find yourself constantly typing. So that's just a little hack that you can do for teachers, and it makes their feedback a little bit faster if they just have specific things that they need to work on, and then they can spend their time typing out the things that are specific just to that kid.
That's a great tool. So we've talked about the instructional part of the NTI day. Again, since I am also the one that takes care of like all the documentation, I wanted to give you all some resources on how we did that in Jackson County. One thing that I did was I created a Google site. Actually, for this COVID NTI, I did it in my hotel room at Kisty so that it would be ready. That organized all the forms, all the materials, everything we were going to use was housed on that Google site. So that was very important to have one place, a one-stop shop that the teachers could go to and get everything they needed. Forms, and more forms. We used a form for everything. We used a form to do staff daily logs, report student participation, uploading lessons for documentation. So we have provided you examples of those reports. Take them, modify them if you want to. They're for your taking. The biggest thing for me was uploading the lessons so that the district would have a copy of them. So I created a form that allowed the teachers to upload all 46 days worth of NTI lessons so that we could get them if we needed them. One big question is, what do you do with instructional assistants on NTI? Greta said in her district they utilize instructional assistants as tutors when appropriate, and we did some of that as well. One big thing that we did that was a huge undertaking on my part and some of my co-workers' parts is we could have developed a Google Classroom for them, and they had daily assignments that they had to do inside Google Classroom. On the left are certain topics that we did, and you'll notice some of them is technology related, most of them are not. They talked about children in poverty, autism, different things like that. The screenshot on the right is one that I actually did. One of the first lessons they did was on Google Docs, and it was as simple as how do I format text in Google Docs, because many of my instructional assistants are older and do not know how to use a computer and didn't have any experience, so they needed the very, very basics.
That, Rhonda, if I can jump in
Yes.
real quick, especially on the instructional assistants, I know that was a big question. That was a big question for us, was how do we also help them support those students who maybe have, IEP or 504 needs at home. And one of the things that we did is I actually worked with our special ed director, and we sat down and we created Google Hangout. Like in Google Hangouts, you can do like a chat room. So we would have that student or parent of that student, the instructional assistant who typically works with that student during the school day, and then the teachers who work with that student. Usually, either their grade level teachers as well as their special needs teacher. We would have them in there, so it would just be that student in a place where that student could feel safe to ask questions, ask for extra support, and they weren't posting that on the Google Classroom, or they weren't trying to get up with a teacher. They had access to that team of people that supports them. So that was one of the things. But are there other ideas of how those people can support those students who have extra needs?
What we did, Neil, was, and by we, I mean my amazingly brilliant network administrator set this up, but I just kind of ride on his coattails. But he set up, we had decided we were using Zoom. That was something we decided that was just going to be what we were using. And he set up a Zoom tutor room. And so what we did was we used Clever at our school. If we had not had Clever, I would have probably jumped off the bridge in Russell into the Ohio River during this NTI situation, but Clever saved my life. We have the badges for the students, for the younger students, and it was wonderful. But on their Clever dashboard, we had a Zoom tutor link. And so when the child clicked on the Zoom tutor link, it was a closed room that stayed open during certain hours, and the instructional assistants manned that Zoom link for their assigned times. And so the child would go in, depending on what age they were, they could be high school, they would go in and tell that operator, tell the person who was sitting there. They didn't necessarily have to help the child because they may not know how to help the child, but they would put them in contact with whoever could help the child. And so it would be a one-on-one tutoring session during certain hours. And that was something that we did that helped those kids, whether they were IEP or they were in physics AP class and they didn't understand how to do it.
Love that idea. One of the other things we wanted to share was helping parents. This kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, having one place for everything. Greta, do you want to say anything on that? I think we're right at 2:45.
We are, and Neil said we could go over a little bit because we started a little bit late. But the main thing I would say is on the parents need to make sure that they know that the school knows what they have and what they don't have to work with at home. And they need to know for sure that the feedback is going to come. They need to know who to talk to if the feedback doesn't come. Teachers need to realize that parents are stressed out about this and they feel like it's their responsibility, but they have no idea whether their kid got it or not. They don't know. So the teachers need to realize that's the main thing. The teachers need to realize they've got to give the feedback daily, and the parents need to know how and where to check for that feedback daily. One thing I think also I would put in this is, and I didn't put this on a slide anywhere, but we're going to talk about this in the Kentucky Go Digital thing too, but some of this group of people may not be in the Kentucky Go Digital, so the more you can get this out, the better. One thing that we are going to do, regardless of whether we start school face-to-face or not, is in Infinite Campus behind the teacher's name for a course, behind the teacher's name for first grade, behind the teacher's name for music theory AP, is going to be the course code. NIC behind the teacher's name will be the course code for them to join that class. That way, when they get their schedule, when they go into the schedule on Infinite Campus, nobody has to ask, what is the course code to get my kid in that class? So if people will do that and get those courses set up and put those join codes, not a course code, not the Kentucky course code, the join code for Google Classroom or the join code for whatever your LMS is, that will help get that information out to the parents.
Yeah, that's going to be really great. And I was going to mention a minute ago that, this conversation is definitely going to continue on the KY Go Digital event that is going to be held very similar to this, but that'll be July 20th and 21st. And I know that we've got some great things lined up there, and I believe you're going to be talking about some stuff there and several other people. So hopefully everyone can jump in on that. But, our main thing is making sure that as tech folks that we are, we're doing everything that we can to provide the tools. And like you pointed out several times, we've seen where maybe we should provide a little different training or training that maybe we haven't done before. But thank you all so much for jumping in today. Make sure that you all hit the survey for the feedback.